Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. With me in the studio, as always, is the Mr. Wonderful, the man himself, the author, the Forbes speaker, Eric J. Morin.
Oh my God.
I feel like it's been a while since I've done that introduction, so I had to throw a little pizzazz on it.
I gotta write up my Matthew. I gotta give you some creds back or something.
Sometimes people don't know. I have like a list here. What adjectives could I use? Pull it up before we get on here. What could I say today?
My list of adjectives, right? That's funny.
I like it. I think, when we were trying to figure out, I've been doing some searching, trying to figure out what's a great relative topic. And, you just hosted a webinar a couple weeks ago. You had, your high net worth group of doctors in a couple weeks ago. And I think the underlying topic that, we see is pointed right now is the idea that doctors and business owners in general lack a strategic plan or a strategic direction of where they want to go. So I want to just dive into that, give your thoughts on it, and that's how we'll get started.
Well, it's something I've been focusing on a lot lately. One, because I love strategy, and two, because there's such a lack of it within the industry. And when I say a lack of it, I'm talking about none, zero, zilch, nada. I would argue there's a commoditization of information within the dental consulting world that a lot of people are having the exact same conversation. This is what you do when a patient walks in. This is how you pick up the phone. This is, and all that stuff. And then there's operational efficiencies around, strategic scheduling and all that type of thing. But, and those are all great. You have to have operational efficiencies. You have an amazing experience. You have to treat patients a certain way. And all those things be true. I mean, they're fundamentals to a great business, and you have to get those things down. But they're not how you become great. And they're not how you really move the needle. They're fundamentals. So you got to tie your shoe, but that doesn't mean you can run a marathon. There's a big difference between tying your shoe and an elite training.
Yep.
And strategy is the difference between tying your shoe and running a marathon. And I was talking to a group of oral surgeons last week. I was asked to fly out and hold a strategy session for a large oral surgery group. And when we talked about it, we were talking about, and even during that session, there was some commoditization of information. And I said, we have to look at industry wide. And by the way, I'm going out to do a strategy session tomorrow in Arizona. And the reason why is because there's such a lack of strategy in the dental marketplace. And I'm talking true strategy. I'm not talking about people utilizing the word strategy. I'm talking about true business strategy. I was talking because and by the way, there's a misunderstanding because in business, what happens is when you are able to create a strategy and roll operational efficiencies around that strategy, the problem is it makes it very, very difficult to duplicate. I said the problem is for your competitors, because what happens is that, so let me give an example of what I mean. So Southwest Airlines, I was holding a webinar, or I was asked, McGuire Woods, who's a large DSO law firm out of Chicago, asked me to be on their webinar. And we were talking about this. One of the the CEOs of one of the DSOs, orthodontic DSO, was talking about their strategy. And we were talking about the fact that, there is such a lack of this within the industry. But the thing is that when you look at, so for instance, let's just say Southwest Airlines. And he had brought up, the reason I brought up that webinar is because he had brought up Southwest Airlines. And I'd kind of had a rebuttal to his comment because he had said, Southwest Airlines flies the 737. And that's all they fly. And so they've built their entire cost structure, their operational efficiencies around low cost, right? And so they don't have gate agents, and they've eliminated this and they've eliminated that. They have different maintenance crews and all of it because they built a cost efficiency model. So that is a strategic, right? It is a strategic direction. It's a strategy. So it's not just the fact that they have 737s. It's the fact that that reduces maintenance. They don't have to have multiple technicians. They don't have to da. So everything is around cost efficiency, and what they actually put is what we call a needs-based strategy. And so in that situation, what happens is that they have built a model that's hard to duplicate. And in fact, Continental Airlines tried to duplicate them and called it Continental Light. But because their cost structures were different, okay, so that's what I'm saying. Strategy is not some buzzword. Literally, it's $1 billion, this is where, by the way, Toys R Us is out of business and companies like that because they lost their strategy or they stopped having a strategy. And so what happened was is when Continental tried to follow them, Continental was a full service airline. So their operational efficiencies were not built. They were more around perceived value and not around cost efficiencies. And so when they tried to do it, ultimately cost the company billions of dollars and the CEO lost their job. Well, we can look in dental and see the same thing. And let's go cost efficiency in dental. How does that work in dental? Well, we have this misconception in dental that if you have a lower price point, then you provide low quality of care. And that's just not true. I think that's a mistake. And it's like Aspen Dental. Aspen Dental took a lot of DMOs and a lot of other insurances nobody else did, and nobody cared about them until they started walking into the PPO space, right?
Yeah.
But they've built their whole model around cost efficiency, and so what ended up happening is they were able to execute a market and go after a market that nobody wanted to go after. And so they literally created an entire $1 billion company going after a marketplace that nobody wanted. It was wide open for the taking, and they created a strategy and they went after it. And people say, well, that's Aspen. Look, I talk to doctors that work for Aspen. They're good doctors. And so there's this misconception when we get to strategy that if you're not doing a Nordstrom type model, which there's a lot of complexity around that, because you have to build the operational efficiencies around that you're not a quality dentist. And that's just not true. It's not true at all. But you have to build a whole business model around that. And the group I was talking to last week, they go, man, this is a lot of work. I'm like, I know. That's why people don't put differentiation strategies in place, because differentiation, I could walk into 98% of all dental offices in the United States and I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. They all do the exact same thing. It's all commoditized. They all have the same check-in process. Your hygienist comes out, asks you how your day is going. It's the same process. And so what ends up happening is that, well, how do you then, in a changing marketplace, which we're in a changing industry with private equity coming in, how do you compete in this marketplace?
Yeah.
And the answer is how you compete is strategy, because if you build your operational effectiveness around and efficiencies around your strategy, the problem is somebody cannot just duplicate. You can't just go duplicate ClearChoice. You can say ClearChoice. Now, we don't have to go just that side, but I'm just saying these are cost efficiencies that you can show. I'm just proving that you can do it and create $1 billion company. But if you were looking at ClearChoice, you can't just go duplicate ClearChoice, because it's their supply chain management. It's how they compensate. It's their pay structure. It's everything. The way they buy buildings or rent buildings and everything. Everything is built around a strategy.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that's what's lacking significantly in this marketplace.
And I think, like, to your point with Southwest is, we've talked numerous amount of times to find out like what your differentiation is in the marketplace. And I think Southwest, what they did was they tried to flip the model a little bit. And that's why they're one of the most profitable things. If they would have came in and tried to be Delta, United, American Airlines, they probably would have got their butt kicks. And it's the same philosophy when it comes to a dental practice. They'll say, oh, well, you don't know my specific marketplace. I can't change there. Like, how are you going to help me? I look at it and say, if you do know your marketplace, well, that's great. It sounds like you know your marketplace, but how are you going to be different in the marketplace? Southwest did it on a $1 billion scale. You are a a business that is not necessarily a giant fish in a large pond. So you can figure out a way to differentiate yourself in the marketplace, but they don't have the strategy to do it. And I think, one of the biggest feedbacks we got from one of the last foundation workshops was, you guys are teaching a strategy. That is something that is missing in the marketplace, because as we know, it's changing right now. If you're not trying to go to, multiple locations or trying to grow the single location that you have now, in the next several years, those are going to be obsolete. So if you don't have a strategic plan, it's about time to start considering that.
Well, and here's the problem. So first of all, strategic plan is not just creating a simple strategy. You got to create all your financial goals around it, your cost efficiencies around it, how you retain, compensate, your structure, your reimbursement structure, your supply chain management. Everything's based on a strategy, and that's the thing that everyone. So here's how doctors. If I ask a doctor, how do you differentiate? Here's what I'll often hear. Well, I get to know my patients well, and I ask them about their story, and then I really spend time with them, and I'm like, and I'm
holistic.
That's not differentiation. That's called courtesy. That's called bedside manner. We expect you as a business, like a doctor, to spend some time with me. Like, I expect that. That's not it. That's not a going above and beyond. That's an expectation. So true strategy. And by the way, look, there's complexity around strategy. I'm not going to go to all the different strategies because I'd be here for the next 12 hours. But there's a lot in strategy. But I will tell you, I'm watching DSOs come in that are private equity backed, and they have very advanced strategies. And by the way, not all of them, by the way, because some of them, this is the great thing is, somebody asked me the other day, is the bubble going to pop on some of these good folks? I said, yeah, because I don't know what the heck they're doing. They're just buying up, overpaying, and they're buying garbage. And they don't have a strategy. But
to your point about that is on that the DSO event you were on, one of the biggest things was simplicity. Keep it simple. I think when you just said, it's not, some of these, businesses have overly complicated, crazy strategies. I want, you as a listener to realize that it doesn't have to be something crazy complicated. You could,
someone asked me the other day, they said, we were just talking about this. I said, look at what did Jimmy John's do? Freaky fast delivery. They actually didn't make their product even differentiate. That was interesting. What they did was focus on the distribution channel, and they said, how can we, because, okay, we have ham, we have, salami, we have cheese, we have lettuce, tomato. Okay, what are we supposed to do with this sandwich that's so unique? It's just a dang sandwich. Some people like it more than others. But if we could focus on distribution, if we could get it to people in a fast manner, that would differentiate us in the marketplace. And people would come to us, and they literally built a $1 billion company on the idea of fast delivery. It wasn't even the product itself. That's why strategy is so powerful, because it's like, when you figure out strategy, because the worst thing you do is you look at all your doctor friends and you say, what do they do? And then you run it by them. They don't even know what the hell they're doing, but you're asking them what they think, okay?
Yeah.
And then you're hiring the consultant who's coached the same commoditized information for the last 10 years, and none of it's ever changed. We're going to do another phone training, and so same commoditized information. And then you're wondering why you can't, in this marketplace, stand out, why you can't move ahead of your competitors, because you're doing the same damn thing as all of them, and your business looks the same. And so, not that you can't succeed and do well. The greatest thing about dentistry is there's good margins, so you can almost back into a practice and be, at least make some money. But if you want to dominate a marketplace, if you want to really move the needle, the cool part is that with a true strategy, with strategic planning, and I'm not talking about just an understanding strategic planning, but I'm talking about in capital allocation, who we're going to bring in, how we're going to get capital, where we're going to invest, what does the supply chain look like, what does our pricing model look like, how, what kind of talent are we going to bring in, how do we pay them? If you really get good at this, the problem for your competitors is they won't be able to just compete with you, just like Southwest and Continental. They won't be able to see what you're doing and just copy it. They will, here's the cool part, they will think they can copy it, just as Continental thought they could copy Southwest. They will think they can copy it, and they'll get their butts kicked, and they won't still understand why.
Yeah.
And so it can't be duplicated. That's the great thing about great strategy, is you can't just duplicate it. And if even companies like Google, I mean, Google became famous because of their strategy, not because of their website, not because of their allocation of capital. It was their strategy. That's what made them unique. Microsoft's strategy is why they dominated Apple for so many years, because their strategy put them in front of way more users than Apple, who basically had a proprietary system. It was a different strategy. And so basically Microsoft decided they were going to use an open platform. Apple was going to use a closed platform. They went to market, and the marketplace told them what they preferred. And so the problem with Microsoft is they've just put out crap for so long that eventually they got surpassed because their software is garbage.
Yeah,
but
they lacked innovation.
But Microsoft quit having very well. That was very well said, Matthew.
I mean, I look at it from the dental world too.
Yeah.
Is when we get the practices that call in all the time, and they've been in business for 20 years, and sometimes they try to toot their horn. I'm a $4 million practice, and it's been 20 years and you're a $4 million practice. So it's probably you're lacking a little innovation at this point. You're not doing anything differently than anyone else in the marketplace. If a great question to ask is, if I were to call you and ask you, how are you different from the dentist down the street? I guarantee you I would get the same exact answer. Well, our patient care is better, and our dental services better. Well, do you know that to be true? Like, do you honestly know that to be true, that your dental care is better? Because that to me is not going to make me come to your dental practice. It's not. So it's showing that differentiation. And then I was thinking when you were saying that, is it's important that, oftentimes we do see, the CEO has a pretty good strategy, but the business isn't getting to the next level. And I think it's because you're not living the strategy. You're not living, breathing, dying by that strategy. And if you were, then your team members would be able to relate that as well. When your team members jump on board with the strategy and they know exactly, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to get accomplished, they perceive that when they talk to you. So when a customer comes in, they know exactly what to do. Like, how are we better? How are we different? This is the strategy of the organization. Go from there. So one of the reasons why Chick-fil-A is so successful is because Dan Cathy put in a strategy originally and was like, we're going to not be open on Sundays. We're going to be the basically pay people more and be the Ritz-Carlton of
fast food.
Fast food. And if he wouldn't have told the team members that, I guarantee you right now, you wouldn't get My Pleasure. You wouldn't get people that are super happy to be there every day. And that's one of the things that I see lacking is, oftentimes dental practices work in a silo where you have dentists, everybody else, or it's dentist and office manager, everybody else. And no one really knows what the strategy of the organization is. And I think it's the lack of dentists thinking they're dentists and they only own dental practices. If they thought of it as, I have a business and I'm trying to grow the business, because in the dental world, it's, if you get to $2 million, guess what? You got a kick butt practice. You're a business. If you look back and you grew your business to, $2 million over the course of 40 years, is that really why you opened the dental practice in the first place? I'd argue it's not. You're looking at it in the wrong light.
Well, I was looking at the financials of Deloitte recently, and the breakdown, and I think it was, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty close on this. The consulting revenue was $32 billion, and that's just from one of the big four. So if you don't think strategy is important, then why is the business world spending with one firm $32 billion. That's how competitive the marketplace is that companies would spend with one company $32 billion to get ahead. Because ultimately speaking, when you look at it, look, business it's a tough game. And if you look at the Fortune, and here's what the crazy thing about innovation is that Fortune 500 companies used to last 50, 60, 100 years.
Yeah.
It's like 15 years now that the companies are Fortune 100 are lasting 5 years. I mean, you want to talk about the competitive marketplace is getting tougher and tougher. And I am talking about the dental marketplace too. The worst thing that can happen is complacency and figuring like, well, I got it all figured out because I'm making money. Just because you're making money today does not mean you'll make money in the future. And the problem is people like me will consult somebody else and then they'll plant across the street. Like I would have me on your team because ultimately speaking, they're going to plant themselves right across the street from you. And unless you know what you're doing, you're going to get whooped. And so there's a complexity in this that is so important for you to understand. And by the way, if you don't think I'm right, you think, oh, I'm different, then go look at the medical profession. Look what happened to primary care physicians. Look what happened to the private market. There was only one, the only reason that plastic surgeons and dermatologists stayed private is because perceived value, and that they understood perceived value in the marketplace, which is why plastic surgeons charge so much, and nobody wants a discount facelift. But what happened is that if you think about it, is that the marketplace, you have literally, you get an MBA, you do case studies. Look, you literally have a profession that is almost identical to yours, that you saw what happened, and you can study to see what happened in the medical profession and realizing that the market's consolidating on top of you. And unless you have a great strategy, like you are going to get beat. And people say, well, yeah, but all these DSOs, look, let me tell you this much. Some DSOs are going to fail because they're underfunded or they don't understand margins. Someone asked me, yeah, you're going to have a bunch of them fail. I do think there's a bubble out there, but there's enough private equity to go pick up the ones that fail.
Yeah.
And for peanuts. So how will you compete in the ever-changing marketplace? How will you compete against consolidation? How will you compete with private equity? How will you compete, on pricing? How will you compete? And if you think the way to compete is to wave high when somebody walks in the door and to treat them well when they're in their chair, that's not how you compete in this new dental economy. The new dental economy will take no prisoners. I mean, no hostages. And I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just trying to say, like, it is becoming more competitive by the hour. And so if you're not looking at the marketplace and thinking, how do I compete? Because, by the way, what are the great things CEOs do? Great CEOs are 3 moves, 5 moves, 10 moves, 15 moves ahead sometimes, because you can't think about today, you have to think about 15 moves ahead. So, okay, if we're playing chess, then you can't just think about the marketplace today. Ask yourself a better question. What will the marketplace look like in 5 years? What will it look like in 10 years? Is my business capitalized and ready to handle the marketplace that's 78% consolidated? Because if not only will you have to sell to the marketplace, but you'll have to sell at a discount because you're commoditized in the marketplace. And so they're like, well, why would we go buy you when we can just set up across the street and take all your patients? Now there's ego that comes into this, which is like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. My patients love me, they'll never leave. Believe it or not, like back in the 80s, Ted DiBiase, right, would be like, everyone's got a price, right? It's like, okay, that was my bad, like $1 Million Man. No, yeah, some of you are like, all right, I remember the $1 Million Man. Some of you think I'm a crazy person right now, but Ted DiBiase was the $1 Million Man, and his catchphrase was, everyone's got a price. look, they're going to figure out what ultimately they've got to do, whether it's building the giant Taj Mahal across the street from you, whether it's a price efficiency model, whatever it is, they're going to figure it out because the marketplace, there's too much money to gain. And so what ends up happening, and that's what we saw in the medical industry, eventually all the primary care physicians had to sell out to the hospital groups because if not, the hospital groups were going to dominate the marketplace and take it anyhow. So they were like, well, I might as well go be an employee of these groups because I can't compete in the marketplace against a primary care physician that's associated with the hospital and everything else because the hospitals are ultimately, there's basically a system that they've created that it's a cross-referral relationship, and you'll starve. And this is why even if you see primary care physicians start up independent, they will go with a hospital group sooner or later because it's a very tough marketplace. Now, let's talk about differentiation in that marketplace, though. There are doctors who do differentiate, and they're called concierge medicine. It took them a long time to realize but that's concierge medicine, which is using a differentiation strategy to ultimately not have to go into this system. Do you see proof of it? That when you understand perceived value, and you can charge perceived value, but every part of your system has to be around that. So this is literally why strategy, if you don't have this right, it'll cost you tens of millions of dollars, but it also could cost you your business.
Yeah. And I think in the dental world, not when you were just saying, trying to figure out, what does the next 5, 10, 15 years look like? I think a great way for practices to kind of see where they're at is, and I don't know if I've ever had a practice really like kind of dive into this and see what their patient base looks like. I say that because, as being a millennial and just seeing kind of where the industry's going, there's a lot of people that coming up now, they do a lot of research on stuff before they buy or go into, say, a medical practice. So let's say you're looking at your demographics and you see, 70% of the people coming into your organization are people that are 18 to 25. Well, in my mind, you're probably going to be good for the next 5, 10 years because you're attracting a patient base. Your strategy is getting new people in the door. In the dental world, I see a lot of times, when I go to somebody's website per se, it's this old school website, solo doctor. I can already kind of tell that I know what that practice is. It's going to be a little dated when you walk in. There's going to be no innovation. When I see a practice that has, multiple doctors, their website looks a lot better. I have pictures on it and I can tell that they're attracting other people and they're going to last long term. They're going to be someone that has innovated a little bit to a standpoint of they're attracting new patients, because in the dental world, as you know, is sometimes people go to the same dentist for 40 something years. I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the case because people are always going to be doing research, always going to be looking at reviews, seeing what you're putting out in the marketplace to determine that. So that's a great way for you to kind of get a gauge on, is my business set up for 10 years?
I have 2 primary care physicians, and one of them is, if I need heavy diagnosis, she's amazing. But if I have a cough and cold, I go to the other one. But the other one, here's the thing about it. 9 times out of 10, I go to the one who's not as great. Why? Because he's part of the hospital chain. Because when I go to the next clinic, they have all my records, they have all my notes, they have all my medications. I don't have to answer all the questions again. I don't have to fill out all the paperwork again. Like they know my whole background and they know my history. And so I'm like, that's so much easier than me having to have records shipped. And so there starts to become, this kind of like ease of doing business that I'm like, why would I go somewhere where they don't know me, they don't have my records, they don't have my information, I got to re-verify all my insurance again and start all over, versus if I go into a system, they all have my information, whether I go to a physical therapist, whether I go to a surgeon, whether I go to a PCP, it doesn't matter because they all have my information. So they're utilizing technology in a way to differentiate, but also, by the way, they work really hard on what their experience is, because in Atlanta, hospital chains are, there's Piedmont, there's Northside, and there's Keystone or Wellstar. And so these groups are, there's a lot of money at stake. So they're working on every little thing. And You got to be doing the same thing right now. I think it's, I want to send a message really loud. I mean, I've been doing some pretty intense strategy sessions recently. Um, and when I leave the strategy session, there's always more work to do and it has to be set aside because the thing about strategy is hard. It's actually not simple. It's really hard. To create a great strategy takes a tremendous amount of creativity, research, understanding of market conditions, implementation, operational effectiveness. It takes to put a great strategy in place is a lot of work, but it's worth it. And it takes it can't be one day. It cannot be it's one of the things I'll do a 4-day on-site, our team will, because we're adding more and more consultants, true consultants, MBA style consultants at Tower because, this work is so important and the complexity of the marketplace, I'll let the rest of the marketplace commoditize itself and focus on the basic little fundamentals because the ex front desk person is now a consultant. But we'll focus on the stuff that will really truly move the marketplace, move the needle, move the business, help you compete in the future. And that's not a plug for Tower Leadership. It's a plug for yourself to understand that if you don't get on top of this like now, it's going to affect your wealth, your passive income, your future. I am calling you to action right now saying like you have got to have a very advanced strategy to compete in this marketplace. And if you look like everybody else, if I blindfold myself and I can't tell whether I'm in your office or one down the street, I'm going to tell you right now the only way you're going to be able to compete is price. And because of economies of scale of large groups over time, you're going to lose.
Yeah. And it's just like you said, it's, there's time and time again, people, in the new age want it now. And I feel like the consulting world is, especially in the dental space, is they're focused in on the little, small things, how can I make revenue go up, $100,000 in the next 12 months when they know that happens and then they're stale for the next 5 years. It's because they don't have a strategy. They focus in on the low level stuff. It's hard to go after, the higher level concepts. How are you going to go from one location to 3 locations? How are you going to do that quickly? What operation efficiency do you need to have in there? How much capital do you need? There's not anyone really talking about that because they know that's the difficult stuff. And, it's to the downfall of some, dentists in general is because they want everything so quick now. And the clients that have been with us for, 4 or 5 years, they've seen incredible results because they get the idea that strategy takes a while to get in place. It takes a while for you to get everything in motion and get going. But the long-term gain of that is significant compared to going in and, fixing someone's phones. And then the next 3 months are good. And then Susie leaves and then they have to do it again. And I just wanted to make that point because I know you spend a tremendous amount of time working with, you get asked to fly out constantly to go to different places and just talk to them about strategy. And they always get the same point as we weren't even thinking about doing that type of stuff, or we were focused in on the wrong areas here. This really helped us kind of gauge where we need to go, but we know it's not going to be an overnight fix. We know it's going to be a 24, 36, 48 month process, but we know that this is going to get us quicker results than just the basic level consulting that we've been getting.
What we tell people is sometimes you can outsource C-suite type positions. You can outsource CFO, right? You can outsource a CMO. You can outsource this, but there's also a CSO. A lot of organizations, especially large organizations, have a CSO, which is as a chief strategy officer. That can also be outsourced. That it doesn't mean that you have the ability to. You don't have to know how to do this. Just like I don't know how to do dentistry. You don't have to know how to do this, but because you can't just read a book, there's just way too much involved in it. That's like me reading a book on dentistry and performing dentistry. It's not, there's just too much involved. So, because we have to look at capital allocation, we have to look at hiring, we have to look at all kind of marketing, we have to look at the marketplace positioning, communication with the marketplace. I mean, there's so much complexity around it. But I would tell anybody that is in the marketplace listening to this right now is like, I would put this down as my priority number one, because you have to have this in place, and without it in place, you're going to compete today, but one of the worst things you can do is look at today's marketplace and say, well, just because I'm competitive today, it does not mean you're going to be able to be competitive tomorrow. And so you can't look at today's marketplace. If we were in dentistry 25 years ago, I would argue you could, but look, the marketplace is consolidating, and it's consolidating quickly, and you want to be on the front side of that so that you can capitalize on the marketplace. You want to look at the market consolidation and get excited. You want to look at the market consolidation and realize how you're going to win. You want to look at the market consolidation when everyone else is waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. You want to wake up and high five and feel good. So how do you do that? Well, how do you do that is having the right strategy and then building operational efficiencies around that so that your competitors cannot just duplicate what you do. That allows you to ultimately set prices, set structure, be able to dominate a marketplace and everything you're trying to do.
So for a closing thought as we wind up this podcast, what is the number one thing that you should consider when you just listen to this podcast and I'm ready to go tackle the world? What's the number one thing to consider when developing a strategy?
How you are different, understanding the difference between a unique experience. And I'm not talking about experience when your patient walks in. That's not what I'm talking about. How are you unique in the marketplace? Really understanding what makes you unique. And I'm saying, if you were to sit with 100 doctors, they'd all be like, wow, I never even thought of that. What are you doing that's so unique in the marketplace that it cannot be easily be duplicated? If I could just look at your business model and I can duplicate it tomorrow, which, by the way, I'd probably say the vast majority of you I can, then you have to compete on price. Whether you realize it or not, you already are competing on price. You might not think you are, but you are.
Yeah.
Because you have no choice but to compete on price. What we need to do, is look at your business is to say what makes us different, and then how do we utilize that to build operational efficiencies, and then how do we utilize the operational efficiencies in our strategy to communicate to the marketplace to create a model that someone can not just easily duplicate, just like Continental try to duplicate Southwest. It cannot easily be duplicated, and then how do we communicate that to marketplace to dominate?
I feel like between strategy and marketing, you and I could talk for probably 3 days worth of stuff, because we're always looking at it from a dental perspective, and then at Tower Leadership as a whole, we're always looking at strategy, marketing, what could we do.
But this stuff is so unique. I mean, not everyone knows this is listening, but we've got law firms reaching out to us. We have chiropractic firms, podiatry firms, large medical groups,
veterinarians.
Veterinarians. We have large groups of people that are reaching out to us saying, look, there's no one in our marketplace that is doing what you guys are doing. And so, we want to be able to compete in the marketplace and dominate the marketplace. So we're a dental focused company, but I will tell you, the marketplace is asking for this help because it needs it dramatically.
Yeah. And with that, to that point, we always say it's great to share the knowledge with people. If, you have someone that's outside of the dental space that, is a vet, a chiropractor, a optometrist, an oncologist. If those people, share the podcast with them, like, subscribe on YouTube, share it with them. This is, we try to keep the topics relevant to business as a whole. That's why you always hear Eric say, I'm a business guy that just happens to be in the dental vertical. So always share it. Don't think inside you're cup of people. Look outside, see, who else you guys could share this with, and then like and subscribe as always. Thank you, Mr. Morin, for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you, the wonderful, amazing Matthew Maffey.
Boom. I got to get you your adjective sheet. It will be good. Tune in next time, and we look forward to hearing you.
Hey, just let you know, Verstappen won. All right, bye.